Cleveland Browns starting quarterback Deshaun Watson just went down with a torn Achilles, ending his season and also cementing the fact that his run in Cleveland has been an unmitigated failure. From his high expectations that were brought upon him when the Browns traded for him in that historic 2022 trade, to the results on the field just never being there, Watson's controversial run was almost destined for failure from the start. And in this video, we're going to take a look back at how we got here. How did Deshaun Watson, at one point an MVP candidate and one of the NFL's best young quarterbacks, go from guaranteed success and a potential Hall of Fame career in the NFL to a controversy-ridden failure in the league? I'm Omer Q for Real Take Sports. Be sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Let's dive right in. So Deshaun Watson's run with the Cleveland Browns can all be traced back to the 2020 season. After a couple of really good years, at least by his performance in Houston, Watson and the Houston Texans had a lot of expectations, some people even putting them up there as Super Bowl favorites. However, the play on the field did not reflect the expectations that were set before them. The Houston Texans struggled that year, went 4-12, and at the conclusion of the 2020 season, Watson ended up asking for a trade. Nay, he ended up demanding a trade, as many NFL players do. And this also coincided with some controversy for Watson off the field. In March of 2021, the first of many lawsuits were filed against Deshaun Watson, accusing him of inappropriate behavior during massage therapy sessions. Shortly afterwards, more women came forward and the number of lawsuits grew rapidly, reaching a total of 25. These accusations included claims that Watson exposed himself, touched women with his genitals, and also tried to coerce them into sexual acts. Watson's response to the controversy throughout was one of denial of any wrongdoing. His legal team has maintained that any encounters that have occurred were consensual, and Watson himself even expressed regret for the impact on those involved, though again, he always denies any accountability on his part. And this is an important piece because as Deshaun Watson demanded a trade, you would expect that there would be many teams reaching out to try to get his services. This is one of the best young quarterbacks there is. Again, his rookie year, if he didn't go down with a torn ACL, there's a good chance that he's in there in that MVP conversation. That's how good Deshaun Watson was in his first couple of years in the league. And without those controversies, I think you would have had so many teams across the league because, as we know, nearly every other team in the NFL is a quarterback needy team. You would have people calling out the wazoo to acquire Deshaun Watson. However, these accusations and the controversies off the field made this an untenable situation. This comes at a time where the NFL has really cracked down against these off the field concerns. When you have domestic abuse, or in Watson's case, these allegations of sexual misconduct, this caused many teams out there to kind of understand what was coming next, that being the NFL likely handing down a suspension for Deshaun Watson. And Deshaun Watson, while he was never traded, did not play in the 2021 NFL season because of both the trade request as well as the controversies off the field. So that kind of left his future in doubt as the NFL was investigating these claims and also was ready to hand down their punishment for Deshaun Watson. And big shocker here, for those of you who don't know, it was a pretty substantial punishment. But as we kind of look past the Watson situation and kind of focus on the Browns, in 2021, the Cleveland Browns were coming off of arguably their most successful year ever since they returned to Cleveland back in 1999. The Cleveland Browns not only were able to make the playoffs, but even won a playoff game against their division rival Pittsburgh Steelers behind quarterback Baker Mayfield, who, after being chosen number 1 overall in the 2018 draft, seemed to finally be coming to form and realizing his full potential as the Browns starting quarterback. However, unfortunately, throughout 2021, injuries derailed Baker Mayfield and the Browns season. Baker Mayfield decided to tough it out and play through a shoulder injury that he even thinks back to now, thinking that he never should have done so, which cost the Browns games, which caused his play to take a step back, and caused Browns owner Jimmy Haslam to absolutely lose his mind and think that the sky was falling, because at that point, he was out on Baker Mayfield. And we had heard rumblings that the Cleveland Browns wanted to address the quarterback situation, even though this is Baker Mayfield, the same guy who brought them to the playoffs in the first place, the same guy who won them a playoff game, the same guy who in many ways had become the identity of the Cleveland Browns team. And while Baker Mayfield is no saint as far as the way that he would come across with his teammates or other opponents, the fact of the matter is his play on the field did not necessarily merit the demotion to backup quarterback or someone you want to throw away on the wayside. Nevertheless, the Cleveland Browns, after the 2021 NFL season, decided they were in the quarterback market, and that led them to Deshaun Watson. Now, originally, after the NFL had made it clear that Deshaun Watson would be suspended for 11 games, there were many teams, even with that understanding, who went in with serious requests to trade for Deshaun Watson. And at the time, there was really only one team that people saw Deshaun Watson going to. Even though the Colts had made some overtures, they understood that Deshaun Watson would never be traded within the division, especially to a division rival. So that left the very quarterback-needy Atlanta Falcons, living in the post-Matt Ryan era, as the most likely landing spot for Deshaun Watson. Now, the other thing complicating matters here was Deshaun Watson's preference. Deshaun Watson, at the end of the day, had a lot more say in where he would go, and he was actually, as well as his agents and representatives, were the ones going out there and actually trying to get teams interested in him. And he was looking at teams. He was essentially going on recruiting trips to all these different clubs to not only see what they could offer, but more specifically, see what they could offer him. And at the end of the day, while the Atlanta Falcons made some overtures and also made quite a substantial offer, the Cleveland Browns kind of swooped in at the last minute, took everyone by surprise, and traded for Deshaun Watson. The Cleveland Browns would receive Deshaun Watson as well as a 2024 sixth-round draft pick. In exchange, the Houston Texans would receive a 2022 first-round draft pick, a 2023 first-round draft pick, a 2024 first-round draft pick, 2023 third-round draft pick, 2022 fourth-round draft pick, and a 2024 fourth-round draft pick. My goodness, that's a lot of picks. And on top of that, the Cleveland Browns doubled down and went all in on Deshaun Watson in a pretty historic way, because not only did they trade the kitchen sink and then some for their quarterback here, they also gave him an insane contract, an unprecedented contract that had really never been seen to this level in the NFL. Upon being traded, Watson was signed a fully guaranteed 5-year, $230 million contract with the Browns, making it the largest guaranteed contract in NFL history at the time. And here's the kicker. Even though Deshaun Watson had all of these off-the-field concerns, the deal was fully guaranteed for the entire $230 million, meaning that the Browns were obligated to pay the full amount regardless of injury, performance, or potential legal issue. The structure of this contract provided Watson with an unprecedented level of financial security compared to typical NFL contracts, which often include clauses for teams to release players without paying them the full amount if they underperform or face off-the-field issues. This lack of an out means that the Browns, for better or worse, were committed to Watson in the long term. And as we would come to find out pretty soon, it would be for worse. And I really need to just focus in on this point. We have seen fully guaranteed contracts both before and after the Watson deal. So that part of it was never in doubt. However, the amount of money that Watson was getting paid, over $40 million per year for that contract, fully guaranteed over 5 years with 0 outs, that is something that would make Kirk Cousins jealous. Yes, Kirk Cousins, who very famously had one of, if not, I believe, the first ever fully guaranteed contract for a quarterback. But again, that was 3 years, $88 million, and I'm pretty sure the Vikings had a few outs there if they wanted to. Regardless, Deshaun Watson had the financial security. He had a franchise that had gone all in on him. And after they had traded away former first overall pick Baker Mayfield, it was clear that Deshaun Watson was going to be the starting quarterback for the Browns. It just was not going to be to start the 2022 NFL season because, again, Deshaun Watson was going to be suspended for 11 games of that year. And this 11-game number is a bit arbitrary when you think about how the NFL usually lands down punishments. It's usually between 4 games, 8 games, sometimes 10. But 11 games was a weird number, and it just so happened that Deshaun Watson, in that 12th game or week 12 of that NFL season, the Browns were facing the Houston Texans. Almost like they wrote it up that way. But anyway, this is not Real Take Conspiracy Talk. This is Real Take Sports. So Watson then became the starting quarterback after serving his suspension and would go on to play pretty mediocre in his first year. He was not exactly playing at the same level that he had in prior years, but again, this is someone who didn't play the entire 2021 season, sat out for most of the 2022 NFL season. So I think many Browns fans and Jimmy Haslam, the owner, were willing to give him grace here because they understood that with Watson, it was a long game. They were trying to win multiple championships with a guy that they felt like they knew was the quarterback to lead them to the promised land. And when the 2023 NFL season occurred, that's exactly what happened. Deshaun Watson went out there and he did not lead them to the promised land. That's not what happened. I'm lying to you. I'm a liar. I am lying. No, instead, the inconsistent play continued into 2023. Now, Watson didn't have a horrible 2023 season. He went 5-1 as a starter, 7 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, but he was not producing on the field in a way you would expect Deshaun Watson to do, especially the Deshaun Watson of Houston. And it was very clear that there was something wrong. And Watson at this point had the receivers around him. He had the help. He had everything you would think he needs, along with Nick Chubb in his backfield, to be successful. But they never got off the ground. And then Watson ended up going down with a season-ending injury, which caused Joe Flacco to come in, and yeah, Flacco did the thing, and he led the Browns to the promised land, kind of. The playoffs is pretty much the promised land if you're a Browns fan, but Flacco was able to do something that Watson was not able to do in 2023 or in 2022, and that is elevate the Browns to the playoffs. And after that, it caused a bit of a stir online with Browns fans, but Jimmy Haslam and the Browns were still very upfront about it and saying that they were secure with Deshaun Watson as the quarterback. So we entered the 2024 season, healthy from all the injuries, finally has a few off seasons to really get in tune with his receivers and the offense, with Kevin Stefanski, who has been the team's head coach for Deshaun Watson's entire run in Cleveland. And yet, the results we saw were even worse than what we saw in 2023 and 2022. Deshaun Watson regressed at an alarming rate. Prior to going down in week 7 with an injury, Watson had the Browns at 1-5. And the Browns' production on the field really diminished, especially when you compare it to what Joe Flacco had that offense do in the latter part of 2023 when he took over. And then, of course, Watson goes down with a torn Achilles, which puts an end to his season. And as I said earlier, any debate that he and the Cleveland Browns had a chance here to succeed, because in his stint as the Browns starting quarterback, Deshaun Watson went 9-10 as the starter, throwing 19 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and only averaging 180 yards per game. This is not what you want out of a $230+ million quarterback. This is not what you want from your franchise guy. The Cleveland Browns brought in Deshaun Watson to change the game, to elevate this team to new heights. Yet, Deshaun Watson, you could argue, is responsible for bringing them to lows they probably never should have been to. Right now, Baker Mayfield is balling out as the starting quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, really leading that team, giving that team an identity, something that the Cleveland Browns don't have. Instead, they have a washed former first-round pick who at this point will likely not play in the NFL again when you consider the severity of his injury as well as the controversies that surround him. And you have someone who has more settlements than touchdown passes. That is not what you want if you're the Cleveland Browns. And it's unfortunate that Browns fans had to put up with it. However, unfortunately, they, like many fans in the NFL, have to put up with owners who do not care about what is best for the team and what is best for winning, but only care about making splashy moves without thinking about them. And unfortunately, Jimmy Haslam is the person to really blame here, and it doesn't look like he's going to sell the team. So it doesn't look like things are going to change for Cleveland. And this has not only put the fans in a bad spot, but it's put Kevin Stefanski, someone who at one point was touted as one of the best coaches in the NFL, and I believe was even up for Coach of the year the Browns went to the playoffs. And now he's on the hot seat. And the truth of it all is, it all could have been avoided if the Browns didn't make this dumb move. But hey, that's history. And so is Deshaun Watson's time as a starting quarterback in Cleveland. Although, they still have one more year, so maybe they'll give it another go. I don't know. We'll see. Guys, let me know what you guys think about Deshaun Watson's run as the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. Was there potential there? Was it never supposed to work in the first place? Should they have just kept Baker Mayfield? I want to hear from you guys. Also, be sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released.